Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
Fine, sir. How are you,
You
sir?
you are the moderator today.
Yes, sir.
So after my lecture, you note down the questions and let me know the questions.
Yes, sir. Dr. Sanju Mahajan will pose the questions.
Yeah, so you write down the question. Maybe you ask the question
Okay,
and
sir.
then I reply one by one to the extent it is possible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so
What do
much.
you do? You are a scholar there.
Yes, sir. I am a research scholar in education.
Education. Okay.
Education. Yes,
Is it very hot in your place?
yes, sir. Very hot.
Okay. So Sanjeev,
Yeah, sir. How are
Good
you,
evening,
sir?
sir.
yeah, I'm fine.
Nice seeing you, sir.
Yeah, when people are doing a webinar, you are organizing a workshop. Great idea. Huh?
And sir,
Yeah.
you must have gone through the schedule. It is a well designed, comprehensive schedule for 7 days.
Yes. Yeah, it seems to be very, and you have invited people from different parts of the country, from
Yeah,
JNU,
yeah.
different. Well, good, really
Thank you,
good.
sir. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Okay, we start up with the proceedings, sir.
Yes.
Uh, it's it's my honor and privilege to welcome Professor Biswajit Ghosh, Department of Sociology, University of Bardhaman, West Bengal. On behalf of Department of Sociology, NAS College Meerut, my management, my principal, and all the participants, I heartily welcome Professor Biswajit Ghosh. I also welcome T. Niresha, research scholar, NKT National College of Education for Women, Chennai, who plays the role of a reporter today. She is one of the participants for this national workshop. My idea was to choose reporters amongst the participants only, and I placed and selected 22 participants to place them for reporters in different sessions. So she has been placed for this session. I hand over the proceedings to T. Niresha, who is a research scholar. Please,
Thank
Niresha.
you. Thank you, sir. Good evening to all. Now we are all on the second session of the day one workshop. Welcome you all. I feel an immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Biswajit Ghosh, an expert of today's session. Biswajit Ghosh is a senior most professor of sociology at University of Burdwan and has been teaching since 1986. He did his master's from University of Calcutta and his doctorate from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Prior to joining the University of Burdwan as a professor, he served as a lecturer, senior lecturer, and reader in MBB College, Government of Tripura. He also played a leading role in curriculum development for various institutions and universities. He has 34 years of research and teaching experience. He has been associated with various universities and institutions of West Bengal and also Northeast as an external expert. He had authored 93 articles, among these 9 international and 36 national articles. He had also authored modules and reviews in reputed national and international journals. He had written 3 major policy documents of UNICEF in the year 2007, 2010, and 2012. He had carried out 3 major research projects along with 2 minor projects. He had also worked as a module coordinator of UGC e-Pathsala course for research methodology and social movement paper in sociology. He is an active member of managing committee of Indian Sociological Society, and he is currently acting as a Vice President of Sociological Association of West Bengal. Current area of specialization of Dr. Biswajit Ghosh includes sociology of industry and organization, sociology of development and environment, society, culture and social issues in India, gender and politics, and sociology in India. He is a member of editorial board in various peer-indexed journal. Dr. Biswajit Ghosh received gold medal for his excellence in journalism from Seminar Research Center, Hyderabad in the year 1997. He had also received scholarship for his PhD at JNU University, New Delhi. He also published 2 books entitled Interrogating Development Discourses on Development in India Today and Parivesh Vidya in 2012. And also 2 books are in a process of publication entitled Sociology in India and Industrial Structure of Labor Management. On behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University, Regional Center Noida, and NAS College Meerut, and participant, I am very proud to welcome such an eminent and distinguished expert on research design to deliver his view for today's session. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Nidesha. Thank you, Sanjeev. Now, should I begin? Has the participants have already joined?
Yes, sir. They have joined us, and so many are seeing it live on YouTube, sir.
Okay. Now, before I begin, I think Nisha had correctly mentioned about EPG Pathshala. Those who are willing to go through details of different aspects of research methodology, some of which so topics are being discussed in this workshop, and many more are also being discussed and written by eminent scholars, sociologists across the nation. And these are there in UGC's EPG Pathshala website. There are 35 modules, and all these modules deal with different aspects of research methodology. I think it's a great sort of treasure for research scholars and teachers in particular who are assigned the task to teach any aspect of research methodology. Now, I've been assigned to talk about research design today, and I have also written the module on research design in the EPG Pathshala. Now, we all know that all research basically needs a particular kind of design, because unless and until you design your research, unless and until you plan your research, unless and until you have a definite strategy to work out your research, your research is bound to fail, and probably the conclusions and the findings that you would be generating would not actually carry weightage in the sociological field. So obviously, all of us doing research, writing articles, writing books, collecting, using data from the field, would need a very strong research design. But before that, I would also ask all my participants to keep one thing in mind. In contemporary age in particular, wherever I go for any kind of interview for PhD or any kind of, evaluate a paper for submitted to any international journal, I normally look into one basic measure question. That question is, what is new that you are arguing? And this question is also linked to my discussion on the research design. What is new that you are arguing? What has not been already been done by the scholars? All research has a component for review of literature. You review the literature, you come out with certain conclusions. But after the review, you say these are the drawbacks, these are not being done. Then at the end of the day, when you submit your findings, you are asked the basic question, what is your basic question? So from the very beginning itself, one should be very clear about what new a person is going to do. I would give one example to explain this. A scholar came to me. He's a college teacher. He's from a minority community. And I asked him what would be his basic area of research. He says he would like to work on the illiteracy, issue of illiteracy among the minority communities in his areas. He has seen this in his livelihood. So he'd very much interested in working on this aspect. Then I said, how many people have already worked on this? He said, many. There are such a committee report. There are many other reports which basically speak about the underdevelopment of a particular minority community that he belongs to. Then I said, why don't you do something new? Don't you see that girls and boys hailing from the community, they go to school, they go to big bazaars, they go to mall, they participate in many civil society activism, they are part of the nation building. Why don't you pick up this segment on which actually our knowledge is very scanty? He said, this is wonderful. So you, from the very beginning, you should be very careful about what you study and what will be the importance of the topic that you are studying. If you are very clear that this is going to the study and this study is going to be an innovative one from the one that are not being done by other scholars, then from the very beginning itself, you are fixing your design very correctly. So the basic purpose of choosing a design begins with choosing a problem. What kind of problem that you are choosing? So research design is basically a plan of doing research starting from A to Z. Whatever you do in research, you plan everything. I would give another example to explain what is a research design. For instance, you thought of organizing a birthday party. Okay, for that you have to invite your friends. So you draw a list of friends whom you would be inviting, right? And then you also draw a menu. If you decide to go to a hotel, fine, there's a different distinct decision. It is linked to your monetary power. If you decide to have a limited party and invite them to your home, that is also a distinctly different decision. For all these different decisions that you will be taking, you have to have a distinct paradigm. You have to either go to market, purchase, or you have to place order. And then you have to invite people, you have to receive them. And at the end of the day, when you finish to the party, you wait for a kind of applause on the part of your the friends whom you've invited. So you wait for them to say that, well, it is a wonderful party. Wait. So similarly, when you do research, you begin with the problem, think about the problem, go to the level of literature, go to field, collect data, okay, then analyze data and write your findings, present your findings, in national and international platform. Then a body of sociologists come forward and say, well, this is a wonderful work. You wait for that. So similarly, like organizing a party, you have to organize yourself in doing research. It's not just going to the field one fine morning and then selecting a topic one fine morning and writing something. It's not like that. So sociological research is basically distinctly different from journalistic writing, right? So unlike a journalist, we decide, we plan about strategy, about techniques, about methods, what to do and what not to do. And for this, there is distinct sociological literature which would suggest you, if you do this thing, you will have this problem. For instance, if you decide about random sampling, you must have a database. If you cannot go for random sampling, you'll have to accept this. So you go to the literature to find out the kind of selection that you are doing, what are the positive and negative aspects of the decisions that you are taking, right? Like picnic, if you go to a hotel, you have to spend more, okay? And if you cook in your home, you have to go to market and you'll be putting your family members under pressure and you have to arrange it in your home. So all these decisions carry distinctive meaning. So research is not done, on a single day. It's a sort of tedious effort, and therefore I would ask all my scholars and teachers in particular to be careful from the beginning. So research design helps you in meaningful ways. What are these ways? First of all, study type. What kind of study you will be doing? Is it an exploratory study? Is it a descriptive study? Is it an explanatory study? What kind of study you are doing, right? Narratives, based on narratives, qualitative, quantitative. Then what kind of questions you'll be asking? If it is a qualitative study, obviously you go for questions. If it is a quantitative study based on statistics, you go for building hypotheses. What are the hypotheses that you are thinking is important for your study, right? And then variables. What variables? There are dependent and independent variables. What independent variables you think important for your study? Why you are not picking up an independent variable that is important, that is already there in the locality, right? Then sources of data. What are the sources of data? What are the types of data that you will be collecting? What method you will be collecting, you will be using, whether it is interview or observation or narrative or focus group discussion or whatever it may be. Then sampling, whether you would follow a sampling method, what would be the method, right? So all these, frame of analysis, writing style, everything. So starting with the beginning of planning the research, ending with the formulation of writing the report, everything comes under the paradigm called research design. So if you have a very solid research design, obviously you can expect that your research findings will be very good. So that's why we all expect research design, and we all expect scholars to follow a research design very meticulously. Now, often you use the terms like design and method co-terminously. Let's be very careful about this. Designs and methods are distinctly different things. They are different. Method comes under design because design is a much wider concept. It includes method, right? And by method here, we are basically referring to the techniques of data collection that one adapts for doing a particular kind of method. Now, the purpose and utility of a research design is also partially being explained by me, but let me do it formally. There are two major purposes that a research design serves. One is it justifies the objective of the research that you have developed. So your design is linked to the objective that you have framed. Obviously, there are different kinds of research designs, and based on the research objective, the queries that you have faced, or hypothesis that you have built up, you have to pick up a particular type of design that is most fruitful for you. Secondly, there are many errors that you commit while conducting a research. So a design will help you to omit those errors, to ignore those errors. This is called control mechanism. Because in any kind of research, there are many variables which play a major role in deciding the fate of the findings. I would give you an example to explain this. We are passing through a very difficult time. Okay. Now, if you consider that this is a corona phase, and if somebody goes and talk to people, he would report that many of the people whom he talked, they are very tense. They are very unsure about the future. This reflects the conditionality through which we are going through. So if you conduct a research in a particular time in which people are very tense, your data would reflect that. Now, if you compare this data with the data which was collected during normal time, then probably you are putting yourself into methodological error. These are uncomparable. You cannot compare uncomparable data. So this is the mistake that you are doing. So research design will help you to get rid of unwanted and extraneous variables. And there are errors, that one commits in doing a research. By deciding about this twofold way objectives and cutting your error, research design helps you to establish two things: reliability of your data or reliability of your findings, and validity of your findings, validity of your data. What are these two things? Reliability means replicability. If you are doing a study in a particular village, someone else doing a study in another village, findings would match because both of you are picking up similar parameters. Say reasons for illiteracy in a backward village in Bengal, reasons for illiteracy in a backward village in UP almost be similar. So this is called replicability. Your findings are replicable in other contexts. Why replicability? Because sociology being a general science, it talks about general trends. Your findings should be useful to the planners, to those who are doing research in many other parts of the country. If it is not useful, what is the utility of doing research? If you say your findings are applicable only to the people with whom you have talked, it is not even applicable so far as the village is concerned. Normally, research is not done keeping that kind of temporality in mind. So we do research keeping in mind that replicability, that my findings would be applicable. It should be theoretical. Either it should modify a theory, it can nullify a theory, or it can justify a theory. So our purpose is basically to build up a sort of general arguments. This is called reliability. And then validity is internal consistency. Your arguments should be internally consistent. For instance, you are giving a table on poverty, but your explanation does not match with the tables that you have given. You are citing case studies, case histories of sufferings of people, but your data interpretation, the findings, it does not reflect that. So there is a mismatch. So validity means your internal arguments are very consistent, and this consistency is helping you to build up a particular argument, right? I'll give you one example about inconsistency. A scholar was arguing about transgender rights, right? And then that scholar has done a field work, and the field work data suggests that transgender people behave like normal people. They live in family, they have family liabilities, many of them have relatives, their friends, they'll almost live like a normal life like many of us. But the data that she has, or that scholar has put forward, speaks about differences. Now, there is a mismatch. You are talking about differences between trans and non-trans, but you are showing a database, you are showing a field, ethnographic report, which says that transgender are also humans like us. They also have emotion, they also have friendship, they also behave in the similar way that we do. So your data do not speak about the argument that you have put up in the beginning. They should match. So this is called validity of arguments, internal consistency of arguments. All these actually make up a very good research design. And obviously, the kind of topic that I have already told you, are the kind of issue that you pick up in the beginning, right? In the beginning of your research has much to do with the kind of research that you have done. In sociology, you must have seen many brilliant works being done by sociologists on a plethora of village studies done by eminent sociologists, starting with M.N. Srinivas, Andra Bhate, Adrian Mayer, Surendra Singh Jodhka, plenty of village studies being done. They actually opt for particular design, right? So the design reflects their objectivity, that they wanted to reflect on the village social life. But if your objective is different, right? When Srinivas was doing work in 40s and 50s, his objective was different. He was studying a particular village. Okay. Now you think that world has changed so much. You want to do a comparative study of two villages of UP. One is a developed village. The other is an marginalized. Marginalized people live there. So you want to compare on certain issues, maybe poverty, maybe illiteracy, maybe birth rate, anything. You pick up certain variable, as I've already told. So this then become a comparative design. So your objective is comparison, and you are picking up a comparative design. You are not picking up a non-comparable or experimental design. But if you think that you would experiment something, cause and effect relationship, you would find out, for instance, the impact of this online teaching on the student's career. Okay, so what do? You pick up a group of students who are introduced to online teaching. This is called experimental group. And then you pick up a group which is not exposed. This is called control group. I'll be talking about all this in detail in later. So you compare between the two groups and say the extent to which your experiment of introducing online teaching to a group of students was beneficial, to the extent it was beneficial to that group of students, or it was not beneficial to a group of students. So your objective of doing a particular kind of research would determine what kind of paradigm, what kind of design you would be opting for. Let me now come back to the major issue of the types of research design. Social scientists often debate about the types of designs, and there are a plethora of designs being offered. And historically, we have been evolving. We have been discussing and researching on the kinds. And now I think sociologists are of, most of them, we do agree with the fact that there are 5 major research designs, and many other designs could be accommodated under these 5 major designs, right? So let us not go into this debate of the variations in debates among social scientists about the designs. Let us concentrate on the 5 major designs that actually are very useful for sociological research. The first one is an experimental research design, which I think partially I have talked about. Let me at the beginning tell you that sociologists use it only partially, because there are problems in doing experiments in real life. Human beings are not guinea pigs. You cannot confine me. Maybe I am here for 1.5 hours. After that, I have to go out, right? You cannot confine human beings, do experiments on human beings. Like, patients, corona patients are given some medicine so that a vaccine can be. But there are problems in sociology, kind of sociological research in finding participants. But even then, let me also talk about this utility, because in certain respect, probably you will have no option but to use experimental design or a part of it. What is this experimental design? In experimental design, the researcher wants to manipulate a kind of a group of participants, so that he wants to see the differences between the group to which he has manipulated or she has manipulated, and with a group which he has not been manipulated. For instance, you want to see the impact of computer-aided education on students, right? No, then what do? You pick up, say, students of class 9, and say that for 2 months, you'll be teaching them only with the help of computer, right? All classes, all teachers will come. They will show PowerPoints. They will come with, computer-aided sort of thing, information. They will disseminate knowledge. And you select section B, class 9, to which manually the teacher goes there, chalk and talk. It does chalk and talk. It does not involve PowerPoint, computer, e-resources. It does not. So this is sort of, control group. So control group is a group which is not being, where the innovations are not introduced. An experimental group is a group where you have introduced new things. You have manipulated. And then after 2 months, you want to see whether computer-aided education has helped in gaining in the knowledge base. Your objective was to see whether computer-aided education enhances the knowledge base of students. So after 2 months, you are going through a test, you are asking certain questions to both students to find out whether their knowledge base on, say, English grammar or, say, science has improved or not, right? Maybe your findings may reflect differences, maybe it does not. Now, these experiments are often done in evaluation studies. For instance, if you are said, if you are asked that, why don't you do a study on the impact of NREGA? Okay. Now, it's a employment generating scheme, we all know. And you are being given the task to see the impact. What do? You choose a particular village where NREGA is implemented. You choose another village where it is not implemented. Then you talk to people, their lifestyle, their expenditure, everything, literacy, impact on literacy, impact on women's empowerment. You choose certain variables and then compare it with the findings from the village where NREGA was not implemented. So you can then say, because of NREGA, this is the cause. The effect is this. Effect is either literacy or more savings or more sort of livelihood standard of living, right? Security, mobility, migration has become less. So this is the cause and effect relationship that you will be establishing by doing an evaluative study. But there are problems, as I've already said, there are problems in doing this kind of study. What kind of study? What are the problems? First of all, if you do a compare, for instance, that computer aided example that I gave, section A students were given teaching with the help of computer, section B students were not. But you forgot one thing, that many of the students of section A studying in class 9 were introduced to the computer, well, because they come from a very rich background. They have their computer, they have the smartphone, mobile phone, and they do use it in their daily life. So as compared to B, probably students of A were using computer, many of them were using computer as compared to B. So how can you presume that only computer level teaching introduced for the last 2 months has added to the knowledge? This is number one objection, that there is a mismatch. You cannot say that only because of computer aided education, their knowledge base has increased because they come from a very rich background. So they have computers, they use it. Because of that kind of thing, they are already introduced to certain new ideas, which probably students of section B were not. Had there been a real experiment, probably you would have selected all kind of similar students who are not introduced to computer. But in social sciences, as I've already told you, this is not possible. The second objection is intellect level. You haven't measured intellect level of the students whom you have picked up for study. Now, intellect level decides acceptability level. If I accept something quickly, that means my intellect level is very high, right? If I'm poor, I cannot accept it. So you haven't taken those independent variables. You have just concentrated on one single independent variables, computer aided education, right? Similarly, that village study, you are comparing two villages. Maybe the village where NREGA is not introduced is a posh village, is a sort of developed village close to the city. So obviously, people have a very good standard of living because they go to the city to work there. Many of them are solvent, right? Many of the women also go out to work. So, you have to choose your respondents, you have to choose your places of work very selectively so that you do not commit any mistake. So what do sociologists do? Instead of these sort of experiment, they do quasi-experiments, because randomly selected participants, equally intellectual level, equal social base, so difficult for many of us to select such students and keep them under surveillance for 2-3 months, right? You cannot separate some boys of class 9 or some boys of class B. That will create trouble in the school, right? So conducting experiments in real life often is very difficult. So what to do? They do not randomly do it. They haphazardly do it, right? And then compare, taking into consideration the fact that these findings have certain limitations. They have certain limitations. So, these experiments, quasi experiments, could be of different types. It's done, for instance, in natural setting, two natural settings are compared. Then you can do two non-equivalent groups are compared between two non-equivalent groups and find out similarities and differences. And then you can do pre-test and post-test. Okay, you test a group, you pick up one single group, test them their knowledge base, collect all data, and then introduce some certain thing, right? And then pre-test after a point of time. Okay, now the corona medicine is being done like this. Pre-test, they test the body, blood level, everything, and then inject a vaccine, and they see the reactions. So the pre-test and post-test often are done, and there are also comparative designs. You combine some pre-test and post-test, and combine other types of quasi-experimental designs. So it is possible in if you are assigned that kind of task, if you have the objective of finding the cause and effect relationship, to carry out experiment in limited way. The second kind of very useful sociological sort of design, largely used in sociological research, is cross-sectional research design. It is also called survey design. You don't do any experiment here. You do not do any manipulation here. What you do, you select more than one participant, say 300 sample, okay? And then you interview them at a single point of time. Why at a single point of time? Because if you do it at several times, if you're in distinctly distinct times, then the question will be, because of time difference, your findings have differed. Okay, these studies would provide you quantifiable data, huge quantifiable data, which one can use with SPSS package, and thankfully there are lectures also in SPSS. They also help you to study the relationship between variables. But cross-sectional study won't help you to study the cause and effect relationship, which is particularly seen in experiments. Okay, so they lack internal validity. That means cause and effect relationship, they are very poor. But so far as replicability is concerned, generalizability is concerned, they are very powerful, and many findings done through survey, wider survey, have represented about the social life of India. And often these are very useful because India is a very large country. You have to pick up often large scale data, for instance, migrant workers. Okay, we are talking about migrant workers, but we really lack data on migrant workers. So this is a wonderful area on which probably some of you could work. Where do they go? Why do they go? What kind of work do they do? What kind of life they lead? Like, okay, so we need large scale data, and this is possible only through cross-sectional research. The third one is longitudinal research design. Now, longitudinal research design, often many of those who have done this, they haven't planned it earlier. But ultimately, at one point of time, they thought, let us do it again. What is this? Many people have done village studies, say 20 years back, 30 years back. They go to the village again. Okay. Normally, if you do any kind of research, you stay in the field for 2-3 years. So by the time you come back, you see changes in people's lives. Maybe they have become internet savvy, they have become mobile, they are using smartphones more and more. So you notice changes in the lives of people. Okay, dowry demands goes up like this. But longitudinal study, they are done at 2 different points of time, after a gap of time. It's not continuously done. Like your research, you're staying in the field, it is continuous. But if you go again, then you can do wonderful work. So I would request all of you, those who are doing research as now, involved with the field, not to let your contact with the field lose. You maintain your contact. Why? Because you can do a wonderful study after 5 years, saying that, well, these are the changes that I can notice in the lifestyle of and the value pattern of my respondents. There are wonderful studies done by Adrian Mears. Adrian Mears went to the same village after 38 years. When he initially went, there was caste distinction so prominent. But when he went after 38 years, he saw that people do not use the term caste at all. They replace the term caste with a new term. They call biradri. They call community. So caste is there, but through the back door, not through the front door, because they have become aware of the fact that they cannot make use of caste sentiment in public life. Okay. Similarly, Surendra Singh Jodhkar, I mean, eminent sociologist from JNU, he has studied the Haryana village after 20 years. Now, when he initially went there, religious Babas were not there. But later on, recently, when he went there, he found so many Babas. Why? Why are religious leaders dominating? Because people are suffering from fear. Okay, there is a loss of faith on the systems. So they are more and more relying on the Babas telling them what is going to happen. Then Dalits are migrating from Haryana villages to cities. So those who are agricultural laborers, those who are Dalits, when they migrate to cities, they pick up a new lifestyle. The caste system, their link with the caste system loosen. They assert their identity. So this is something new, all these longitudinal research design. They are very helpful in establishing a theoretical base and argument that this is the way social life is changing. Maybe the impact of globalization in 2010 and impact of globalization in 2020, right? You would remember when SARS happened in 2002, that epidemic virus, it affected only 64 countries. So the nature of globalization in 2002 was less. Communication, contact between countries was less. But in 2020, this coronavirus has affected more than 200 countries. So this is comparable sort of data that you are comparing two diseases that happening at two different points of time and telling that, well, these are the reasons. Okay. Now, longitudinal studies can be done in two different ways. One is called a panel study. The other is called a cohort study. Panel study means you pick up some group of people, some respondents at one point of time. You go there. I mean, haphazardly you choose some respondents, say some villages, like Adrian Mayers and Surendra Singh Jodhkar has done. This is a sort of panel study. They pick up some people. Okay, they go there again after a gap of say 5 years, 6 years. They study the same kind of people, same respondents. This is to be in panel study. The compulsion is you have to pick up same respondents. In cohort study, you pick up similar kind of respondents, say patients who are aged like me, right? Or people who are young, mobile users, for instance, technology user. For you pick up only certain groups of people, certain types of people who are similar. This is called cohort. Okay, so you study on a particular group of people because of your objective. Your objective is to see this. So you are studying a cohort group. Then you are doing a sort of longitudinal study after a point of time. Now, these studies have advantages, of course, advantages. All studies have advantages, but like advantages, they also have disadvantages. What are the disadvantages? First of all, in panel study, you need same kind of respondents. But probably you cannot, rely on the same person because he must have died. He must have migrated. Or he must have said to you, okay, I'm not ready. I am not going to share time with you. So this is called attrition. People are being deleted from the list. Then you are picking up similar kind of respondents. Here comes a methodological, very serious question. To what extent your first finding and the second finding match with each other? They are not representative. You are not picking up the same kind of people. So panel study often suffers from this kind of problem. Even though there is value, there is utility in doing this, but this is the problem. Cohort study also similarly. If you do it after a point of time, then the same kind of problem. You are replacing a respondent, and since you have replaced, so there will be methodological errors. But if you, irrespective of this, if you do not select the same kind of respondents, haphazardly you are selecting some villages, you are doing a study on the whole village, you are able to see changes in the village. Roads are being made, electricity facilities have come, people are using mobile phone. Okay, families are becoming nuclear. People are migrating more and more. People are using computer. These are all seen. This can be seen with the same with the different kind of people, with the different kind of families. So even if you pick up different families, you can generate a large segment of general data which we can speak about the changes that has happened in a particular village. And many sociological research, many people have really done it, and we call them, many of the studies are qualitative data because they speak about the quality of life. but you can also collect quantitative data. Okay, number of occupations, for instance, Professor Jyotka has done. In his earlier study, number of occupations were less, but after 20 years, number of occupations have gone up. So you can also give arithmetical figure, numerical figure, in order to express the point that you are expressing. And often this arithmetical figure, for instance, literacy rate, poverty rate, these are figures, okay, numerical figures, but these are very helpful in order to explain a particular point, right? Instead of saying, well, these 5 people are illiterate, you speak about the rate. What Durkheim has said, rate expresses better sociological phenomena. So you can have better rates of people through this longitudinal data also. The fourth kind of study is case study research and design. Now, case studies are done both in quantitative study and also in qualitative study, but most of the studies are basically qualitative because people using focus group discussion as a technique, people using narratives, people using PRA methods. These methods of late has become very popular among social scientists and feminists in particular. They feel that that the method should not obstruct, and people should there should be free flow of information. And these FGDs, narratives, and PRAs are the methods, qualitative methods, which allow the participants to talk freely instead of asking a question. If you ask a question, you are framing a question. When you're framing a question, this is your mentality. You want certain kind of data. Why should a person give you certain kind of data, right? I would tell you one simple example. I was doing a survey on the workers. So I began with the question of what is your family income. Many of them said their income is less. But when I went to the expenditure part, they said their expenditure is much more than the income. So I faced a dilemma. I then asked a question. Tell me your expenditure is 10,000 and you're saying your income is 5,000. What one is true? So then started saying these, that, somewhere or other I understood that expenditure would be close to 7,500 and income is also close to 7,500, somewhere or other. So people have the tendency to say more about income. I earn more, okay, and say less about, say, illiteracy of parents. If you ask the literacy level of parents, they would not say that their parents are illiterate. They would never say. So these are something that, these are flip side of the cross-sectional and interview method. But when you collect narratives, a person is saying how he grew up, whether he went to school or not, what had been his experience, life history of a particular person, he cannot tell lie. Because if he tells lies initially, he will be caught later on, right? Then he will have to manage different other kinds of, he cannot just manage the kind of data that he will be saying later on. So you can do in under quantitative study also, because for instance, you are doing a sort of cross-sectional design. You've gone for interview, collected survey, and then you find out that there is some certain quality of issues which probably you need to collect more. You need to collect more data on the qualitative aspects of social life, right? What do? You either can go for focus group discussion or PRA or narrative or case study. You select certain cases, right? For instance, migrant workers. You collect data from, say, 100 migrant workers, their family, their life, their occupation, everything. Then you pick up 5 migrant workers who represent variations. There could be variety even within migrant workers. These 5 migrant workers, their life histories can be explained in order to qualify the quantitative data. You have collected quantitative data, but you need to qualify them. You need to explain them with a proper understanding, proper explanation. That explanation would be provided by case histories. So case histories are useful, but often many of the studies are qualitative. For instance, Srinivas has done a study on the Mysore village, Rampura. Andre Bhatti has studied Tamil Nadu village. Okay, so many of these village studies done, they are basically done with the quality. Many of them used participant observation, a commonly used technique by social anthropologists. They went there, stayed in the village for more than 6 months, talked to the people, understood everything. They became a part of life, and they started feeling what people do in exact life, real life. Because the moment you ask them a question, they will frame it. They will frame it because they think either you have an intention of asking question, or he cannot tell you the real truth. Okay, because his status would otherwise go down or go up. So in real life, you can see people who are going to school, people who are drop out. Why is a person dropped out from school? Why there is a domestic violence? Why dowry demands are much more than the real explanations would really come. So many very good sociological research have been done on the village studies and following the case study method. But as I said earlier, all designs, all techniques have advantages and disadvantages too. You have to be careful about the disadvantages. And from the beginning, you have to also minimize those disadvantages by picking up alternatives, right? For instance, you go to market, you go with one bag, but if you have the intention of buying more, you go with two bags, right? You're going two bags. So you are prepared well that this is the drawback. So you collect some other kind of alternative data to supplement the argument. Like in cross-sectional design, you have to go for triangulation. You go for triangulation of method. We call it method triangulation. What are the shortcomings? You are collecting data from a particular village. Okay. Now Srinivas collected data on a Mysore village. He developed this theory. He developed concepts like Sanskritization and dominant caste out of those village studies, of that village study. Now the question is whether those concepts or the findings of Bethe, Steady-Bush, or Jotka, or Adrian Mayers are replicable in other contexts. Say South Indian village, the whole of South India. Can a village, Mysore village, represent the whole of South India? Probably in today's context, it is not, because there is so much of variations. But those who are doing it, those who do a case study method, they say their purpose is not to compare these with that. Their objective is different. Their objective is to collect in-depth data, which normally many social scientists want. Their purpose is to collect meanings. You must have read Weber, right? The collecting meaning of an action, why people do it, and what kind of explanation do they give in order to sustain that kind of argument. So in the real life, I take dowry, even though I'm against dowry. If you ask me a question, I will say I'm against dowry, but in real life, probably I have taken dowry. How do you explain the mismatch? For that, you have to go for in-depth study, collect case histories, and collect lifestyle of people. Many studies probably cannot be done through survey. For instance, on the transgender, right? Can you do a survey? You just go and talk, they won't cooperate. You have to go there, stay with them, make friendship with them, and probably after 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, you'll be able to know the way they behave. Okay. And even in a village, if it is a slightly developed village, people are very busy, right? It will be so difficult in a highly populated village. Say many of the Kerala villages are more than 10,000 people. Can you do a participant observation there? You have to select a very small village with a little population. But this kind of villages are hardly available now, right? People are migrating, people go out, people come. So often you do case study, a village study, but you also do a comparative study. That was done by, in fact, one of the prominent pioneers of Indian sociology. His name is Professor Ramakrishna Mukherjee. He was in Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata. In 1944, long back, he did a comparative study of 6 villages of Bengal. So this is a pioneering study. Compare 6 villages and find out the economic structure, social structure, psychological structure of people. This is wonderful. And he used statistical parameters also to compare. Since he was from Statistical Institute, obviously he had that facility. So it is possible that in today's contemporary context, you collect very in-depth data, very strong qualitative data, but you supplement with large-scale data, because we also need that kind of large-scale parameter in order to explain the reliability and validity of our research, in order to establish a theoretical understanding, in order to establish the generalizability of my data. By generalizability, I mean that my findings are applicable in other contexts. One researcher can use it in other contexts. I'm doing a study of impact of globalization in my place. One can use this data also in similar other places, right? I'm saying civil and other places. In semi-urban locations, one can do that. So there are advantages too, because it provides you rich data. So again, I come back to the objective. It is your objective of research which would dictate what kind of study one should do and what one should not. The last one is comparative research design. Here, the objective is basically to compare between two cases. Often, we talk about, say, development index, poverty index, health index, this and that. Okay. Often we see that compare between two countries. Death rate from corona in India is less. Death rate in US is much higher. So you do a comparison. Why is the death rate higher, right? So you pick up two villages, right? For instance, you have decided to work on Narega. Okay, its impact on the social life. So you pick up two villages, a village where marginalized people live mostly, okay, and a village which is slightly developed, right? Or maybe agricultural practices. You pick up two kinds of villages and you compare that what happens in a developed village and what happens in a marginalized village. I have seen in my field research that developed villages have less propensity to child marriage. In Bengal, in particular, villages which are developed closer to the cities, there the propensity to child marriage is less. Dropout of girl children are less. Okay, so girls do go to the colleges. As by comparison, backward villages, remote villages have more propensity to child marriage. Obviously, I am comparing between two kinds of infrastructure. What are the conclusions that I put forward into the government? You improvise the infrastructure. Don't talk on child marriage alone. If you really want to improvise, if you really want to prevent child marriage, you improvise. You create roads, you create facilities, health centers, so that people would like to send their daughters to schools. So many studies, these comparative studies, would come out with innovative suggestion that this is something that is actually causing. Many of the independent variables cannot be caught easily, but through comparative study, you can find out, well, Muslims are illiterate because of this, or maybe Dalits are this because of this. If you do a study on two different kinds of Dalits living in cities and Dalits living in rural area, urban and rural Dalits. So these comparative designs, they have the advantage of comparing between two sort of thing. You can do a cohort study, you can do sort of on the health facilities of people, and often when these comparative studies are done, you collect huge data. So this is advantage, but this is also disadvantage because you have to manage huge data. But of late, there are many statistical apparatuses being developed. You are being introduced to SPSS. This is from quantity to quantity. Okay, you have collected quantifiable data through interview. You put the data in the computer will classify it and give you a table. But there's the opposite kind of computer software too. From quality to quantity, you have collected quality data, quality sort of thing, and then you put the data. There are systems of doing it. Classify data and put it in the computer, and computer will provide you some kind of analytical data which could be used for numerical purpose too. So of late we are doing this, and we are comparative study. Look, for instance, the Human Development Index of different countries. This is comparative, and we need this sort of comparison in order to understand why is India lagging in certain respect, why is US lagging in certain respect, why is that country's why is the death rate and case thing much more in Brazil, for instance. So these comparisons are often needed in order to understand where actually we are going wrong. So comparative studies are very important. You can do comparative studies of migrant laborers and those who are not migrating. Okay, you can do rural development, you can do comparison in time. Okay, rural and urban context, many other things. So in comparative study also, you can pick up comparison plus quasi experiment combined. You can combine. Okay, these sort of study, again, like case studies, they have the potential to build up theories. Why I am again and again talking about theory? My dear friend, basic purpose of your research is to write down a piece of findings, write article books, and whenever you will be sending your article to any peer-reviewed journal, every day I read at least one article for review sent to me for review. Normally, I look for one basic. I begin with one. What is new here? What is your contribution? So you have to do that. You have to do that because unless and until you build up a theory which is applicable, which is acceptable in sociological literature, people reading it will say, ah, very wonderful work. Like the birthday party I told you initially. After the party, if your friends say, wonderful, wonderful, you become very happy. Similarly, when your paper is accepted in a journal, in a peer-reviewed impact factor journal, okay, in social science, there are also impact factor journals, and then you become very happy. You show your article to your colleagues, and then you receive invitation from different publishers. It is true. If your article is published in a peer-reviewed journal, publisher will send you invitation that your so-and-so article was published in that journal. Why don't you send me an article? Invitation. So you have to think of your contribution from the very beginning. What is new that you're going to do? So you have to build up your theory, either by nullifying the existing theory, modifying the existing theory, or substantiating the existing theory. For instance, you are working on the youth population. You may substantiate, you may nullify the Marxian theory that youth today no more believe in the theory of revolution. You may slightly modify it, or you may rebuild the theory that youth today believe in a different kind of revolution, not in the way Marx thought about, because time has changed a lot. So this is your contribution. So my dear friends, there are challenges of all kinds of designs and all kinds of research that we normally do. But we not need to get out of all these. So let me come back to the final task of talking about what are the criteria of a good research design. Obviously, you will be choosing a design which is very good for you, very appropriate for you. How do you know this is good for you? How can you decide this is appropriate for you? How do you know the research design will help you? Because what does the research design do? I am repeating again. I'm coming to the end. It suggests what to do and what not to do. Okay, avoid errors. How does it do it? So there are certain criteria which are very helpful. One is, can it answer the research questions? You have built up certain research questions that you want to do a study on knowledge base of workers. You say that computer aided, your hypothesis is computer aided education enhances knowledge base of students. This is your hypothesis. So this is the question, the relationship between two variables, knowledge base and computer education. And you are testing that. So whether the model, whether the design that you have picked up answer those questions. Okay, number two. Can it control extraneous, outside, independent variables? I have talked about many extraneous variables, right? The which impinges on the findings. For instance, if you go to village study now, the corona effect has penetrated so deep that it will be covered. Basically, all your findings will be covered by corona. So this is something independent variable, corona effect, if I say it correctly, right? So you haven't thought of corona effect. You are talking about knowledge in computer, but people are talking more about corona because this is the corona time. So there are independent variables which actually intervene in between, and you haven't thought of that. So the model, the design that you have picked up, can it answer, can it control the extraneous variables? If they are not controlled, then probably your study will generate confusions. Then can you generalize? Right? The major question that I stressed a few minutes back. Can you generalize? Can you substantiate, build up a theory saying that castes are dominant, saying that Sanskritization is the process of cultural change? This is a theory, right? You are building a theory about cultural change, about power dynamics. Okay. So can you build up certain general arguments which are sociologically accepted, which are not being said by others? For that, obviously, you have to do review of literature, and in contemporary age, with the globalization, I think Internet is a place where you find many things. I've talked about EPG Pathshala, where resources of 14 sociology disciplines are enlisted. 14 sociology papers, there are modules written on 14 sociology papers. I was the coordinator of research methodology paper and social movements paper. And all these papers have 35 modules each, huge amount of knowledge being disseminated and collected on the net. So you just go to EPG Pathshala to learn what is being written there. So Google helps you in order to read literature, read arguments, and go to a point which is not being said by anyone else. Maybe someone has said X, you say, well, X, along with X, there is Y. You add Y to the X argument. So you understand, someone has already said, well, this is illiteracy. You say, no, this is not only illiteracy, this is also poverty. Then maybe third one will say, this is not only illiteracy and poverty, this is also infrastructure, communication, approach. So you go on adding, more you are able to add, more you are able to substantiate sociological literature. Then finally, there are two issues which are very important. One is reliability, the other is validity. I have talked about these two issues initially. Whether reliability means replicability, whether the findings that you are stating can be found in other contexts if someone else studies the similar issue in a similar context. So this is one criteria. And then validity, whether there is internal consistency in your arguments. Your arguments should go like a story. If you see a film, there is a storyline, one after another, right? One after another. And good stories would catch you, would caught you. It would leave, it would allow you to live. If you see a good movie, you would wait till the end. The movie attracts you, right? It engrosses you. So your writing, your thesis should be written in such a way, your article should be written in such a way that it appears like a story, one after another, like a kite. You are, waving a kite, one after another. You are gradually putting it down in the conclusion. So it should be like story, like a simple story, right? And it should be lovable story, use simple language, and English also can be checked. There are softwares available there. Let me conclude what I'm basically talking about today. And I would be basically summarizing. First of all, there is hardly any debate that we all need a very good research design for the research that we'll be doing. Number two, that design should be appropriate for me. Means related to the objective, related to the questions. That should be efficient. Efficient means controlling the biases, independent variables, other extraneous variables. That should be accurate. That I have gone for this, so it is the accurate design. And then economical too, right? For instance, you decide to collect information from 2,000 people and you don't have SPSS facility. You don't know also. So how to do it? How to manage 2,000 data collected from 2,000 samples? So you collect data from 300 people. If you are doing it manually, you can certainly do 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people if you have SPSS. Okay, so this is economical. You should match what is available for you. Whether I told you the story of organizing the birthday party, it all depends on your money power. You have 500 rupees in your pocket and you want to give a party. So obviously you ask them for tea and coffee, right? But you have 5,000 rupees in your pocket, so you ask them to, you take them to a hotel. It all depends on your resources, your timing. And often the fields are so vulnerable that it is difficult to often work in areas. I remember when I went to work on the tannery industry, I fell sick because the water is polluted there. So fields, it's not easy to do field work. It's not easy to go and stay there and talk to people. It takes so much of time and energy. Okay, so you should think about all these possibilities beforehand. Then minimizing the bias and maximizing the reliability and validity, which I have already talked about. Then your relation with the nature of problem and nature of the objective of study. I have already told you this earlier, that it must be related to this. And finally, selecting the right design for the right problem. As there are many designs, you have to make a choice. And you might even combine designs, because you are choosing for different kinds of parameters. You want to both compare and collect survey, Because in many studies, often we want large scale data also. Let's collect in the first round, let's collect data from people, all village people. Then in the second round, you collect only literacy data. In the third level, maybe you collect only domestic violence data through case studies or through focus group discussion. Okay, this is often a sort of your objective, your desire could be. So based on your objective, based on your purpose, probably you have the supervisor. And today research advisory boards are there. There are experts who are there, okay, to help you. And globally, you write to any expert. The experts who are lecturing you, their email IDs will be available with the organizer. You write to them that I'm working on this, so please help us. This is the abstract that I'm thinking. This is the methodology that I'm drawing about. Tell me whether I'm going in the right direction or not. If you do not go in the right direction, if you follow the wrong route initially, you have to walk along, and that is so suicidal, right? So, my dear friends, I have already talked for an hour. It is now your time to question me, and if there are queries, if there are questions, if there are so your observations, you can express this. It's over to narration now.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I'll take up the question answer session. There are few questions raised by the researchers, but before I come up with questions, let me put up my observation. It was an excellent, talk. And as a researcher, as a research student, I came to understand what are the different kinds of, research designs, what should be the criteria for choosing a research design, and how best, it depends upon what we want to do, and the priorities and the results which we are expecting, and the research question which we have in our mind will definitely find out what kind of a research design we have to use. Now, sir, the one question which has come up is there any time boundation in longitudinal research?
No. But let me tell you, if you go for locating changes after 1 year, then the question will be, why are you going just after 1 year? Because what kind of changes have you noticed during the last 1 year? So if there is any major change in between your first study and second study, then you can do. Say for instance, you have gone for a field work in 2019, and in 2020, a new thing is being introduced in village life. New thing has come, something new in the area on which you have worked. You want to see the impact of the new technology being introduced, new system of education being introduced, or something new has been introduced. Okay, so midday meal has been introduced for the first time. Hypothetically think that midday meal has been introduced for the first time. When you went there earlier, you haven't seen this. But technically speaking, it is possible after 1 year, but frankly speaking, it is desirable that you give some time for the impact to evolve, because many impacts are not seen immediately. Okay, it's not in social research, it's not just allopathic medicine, then you give and you see the impact immediately. It takes time. So it's better to wait for 5 years at least, and then go for another kind of longitudinal study.
Thank you, sir. A question has been raised by Lata Arya. She says that, is that research design and research proposal are same? She wants your explanation.
No. Proposal is what you propose, is the research questions, the sampling that you do, right? Research design is the strategy of how to do it. It is the strategy of doing it. Research proposal does explicate the strategies, but beyond research proposal, you have to pick up that I will be doing this. I will be doing this strategy. For instance, case study is a kind of strategy. Okay, it differs from cross-sectional strategy. So if you are going for survey data, obviously you are picking cross-sectional research design. So there is a difference. There is a technical difference between these two. Even though your research proposal might list all those that you are going to do, but your research proposal should clearly explicate the design that you want to use, and that design should have relation with the kind of answers and queries that you have listed, including the techniques that you have listed. Otherwise, you cannot find out the mismatch between this and that. Your proposal might contain several inconsistencies. right?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. How triangulation is different from mixed research methods, sir?
I think in contemporary age, we use both mixed method and triangulation simultaneously, but there is a slight technical, difference. Triangulation refers to 4 kinds of triangulations, right? Mixed method basically refers to only mixing of 2 methods. Mixing of methods could be within method, outside method. On this, I think I have written in EPG partial. Let me explain in brief. When you're doing a mixed method, you can do changes within interview. Say one is in-depth interview, one is structured interview. So this is within method. Structured interview, unstructured interview. This is called mixing within method. If it is mixing outside method, you are picking up other technique. So you are picking up interview and you are picking up observation or case study or a focus group discussion as a technique of data. So you are mixing 2 kinds of methods. One is quantitative data, collecting quantitative data. One is for collecting qualitative data. This is called mixed methods. But triangulation refers to triangulation of data. Different kinds of data you are triangulating. Okay. Mixed method comes the second sort of thing. Okay. Then triangulation of theories. Okay. Triangulation of theories also, and then triangulation of researchers. 2 researchers doing survey on a similar problem. This is triangulation. One is going to the same village to study. The other is going to the same village to study. You want to see what? Whether you are biased or not. Whether there is any personal bias which has actually influenced the findings of particular research. That's why 2 researchers, this is called triangulation of researchers. Okay, often in a large scale survey, this is done, that one team is sent to a particular village, the other team is sent to other village. Okay, to check a particular sort of parameter. So what they're doing, they're triangulating between 2 sets of researchers. So triangulation of researcher is a triangulation of theory. You're using feminist theory with say post-structural, postmodern theory. You're doing a triangulation of theories. So triangulation is a much wider term. It includes data triangulation, theory triangulation, method triangulation, and researcher and theory triangulation. But research method, method triangulation, mixed method basically technically refers to only mixing of 2 kinds of methods, either within or outside. Yes, Sanjeev.
Yeah. What is the difference between cross-sectional data and panel data?
Cross-sectional means you collect data from different kind of people. Okay, you collect from say in a village, you go there are 300 people, you choose, your sample size is 50, so randomly you choose different people, right? But if you are doing a panel study and your objective is to study only say aged people, so you select only 100 aged people who are 60 above, or your objective was to study only youth 20 to 25 age group people, cohort, belong to a particular cohort, right? Or belong to a particular category. You select a particular category of people. So in cross-sectional data, you do not select, but in panel study, you select certain participants, and that participants remain fixed for the second kind of survey that you will be doing. You need to replace that participants if he is no more there, if he has migrated, if he is dead, or he is not cooperating. But your wish will be to conduct the study on the same person. But in cross-sectional data, which is not done in a sort of cross-sectional researchers who never want to repeat with the same kind of persons. Okay.
Yeah. What is the best method to ascertain number of samples in quantitative study and qualitative study?
Well, qualitative study, sample size, nobody talks about sample size. One can study on a single person. There are beautiful studies on a single person, life of a single person. There are studies, done in Europe. Probably, my friends, you know that in the whole of Europe, sociology is basically numerical, and qualitative studies are done by basically anthropologists, and both of them do not see each other. if you by mistake enter into an anthropology department with a sociology degree, you have to do a qualitative study, and those people won't allow you to pick up more than 5 samples. You pick up only 5 persons. You study their whole life. You study the people associated with them. So you are not studying 5 people, you are studying the whole system of 5 people in which they are situated. So they say we are going in depth into the whole system of the lives of 5 people. Okay. But in sociology, obviously, often it is said that 5% sample is a standard sample. Universe and sample. What is the universe? You go for 5% sample. It's more than sufficient in social science research that you have selected only 5% of sample. I think you will be sampling. There will be sampling lectures on sampling. You might also pick up this question with the person who will be talking on sampling. But you know, the size also differs. If, for instance, the universe is 1 crore, how can you pick up 5% of sample? Okay, so often the size also differs based on the size of the universe. Okay, Sanjeev?
Yeah, sir. One more, sir. Could you please let me know if there is any watertight process for research design?
No. There is no watertight. You know, as I've already said you, from the beginning, you should be very careful about design. Number 1. But once you decide that for this purpose, you will opt for this design, and for this purpose, you would opt for that design. You can mix. That is depending on the purpose of your research. I will tell you my story. I went to study on the 30 villages of Malda in order to study the extent of trafficking and extent of child marriage. And studying 30 villages is huge. Okay, I had a study team. It was a UNICEF kind of study. So what do? We initially studied the whole village. What are the people's, what do they do? Okay, how many families, how many schools are there? What is the student strength in schools? Collected data from schools, collected data from panchayats, some families. So we have certain database of 30 villages. And then we classify them in order to closeness to the city and closeness, developed and undeveloped, marginalized. Then we went and identified 4 groups of stakeholders with whom we conducted FGD, right? So we have taken help of 2 kinds of strategies. On the one hand, collected large-scale data through cross-sectional study at one time. On the other hand, since we could not collect data on trafficking and on issues like trafficking and child marriage, you should always keep it in mind that sensitive issues on sensitive research should be done using qualitative techniques. Because you should not ask somebody who is facing domestic violence the question that whether she is facing violence or not. I will tell you an experience when I went and talked to a newly married wife. I just by mistake I asked whether dowry was transacted in your marriage or not. She didn't answer the question, but she looked backward towards the room where the in-laws stay. That symbolic expression was more than enough for me to understand the dowry was really transacted. I didn't ask that question again. So many serious, complicated issues, you cannot endanger the respondent. If she replies, she will face violence more. So you have to collect data with proper technique. For that matter, you do certain, you go for combination of, research designs. You pick up certain design to collect some set of data, but you are not satisfied with that because that kind of design won't help you to collect data. Then you go for similar other kind of data. Okay.
The last question for the session, sir.
Yeah.
If Himanshi Agnihotri, she asks that I am conducting an analytical study of classroom teaching by using some strategy. So what kind of a research design should I use?
Okay, classroom strategy means you are using certain techniques. Okay.
Yeah.
So say for instance, you are teaching MA Part 1 and MA Part 2 students, or semester 2 and semester 3 students. You introduce a technique with the semester student. I frequently do this. For instance, I often went for seminar presentation for internal assessment. There is an internal assessment. So I introduce seminar assessment with batch 1 and introduce term paper with batch 2. Okay, in order to see the response. Now my findings was, I just saw, this is not proper test because I didn't talk to the people. This is my impression only. But if you're doing a test, you have to ask them the questions. You have to ask your respondents questions after introducing, for a period of month. My impression was that for term paper, they're getting external help. For seminar, they have to at least stand before the microphone and talk. So to me, the seminar presentation was a better method in order to allow the students to talk, because many of the students do not talk or do not even ask question in public. So if you are to go for a sort of comparative sort of thing, you have to introduce an element. This is a quasi experiment. Okay, you test the base, pre-test. You do a pre-test of the knowledge base of the students, whether they know about the term paper. For instance, you are introducing term paper or you are introducing seminar, whether many of them have given seminar or not. If there is a single student who is aware of term paper, who has written it in UG, you drop him or her because she's already experienced. Or if there is a student who has already done seminar, who is frequently attend seminar, delivers talk, you drop him or her from the list. Don't experiment with her because she is already experienced. So you choose your respondents selectively and then introduce the your teaching method. After a point of time, you ask them. You have a set of questions. What are the gains? You have a control group to whom you haven't introduced the technique, and you have a experimental group with whom you have introduced a particular teaching method, and you compare the findings. This is the way probably you can do it. But if experiments are not possible, often it is not possible. Why it is not possible? You find that students frequently do not attend classes, because in experiments it is run for say 15 days, 1 month, and students should be very regular in the classes. Those who are participating in particularly the experimental group, they should participate regularly in the classes, but they are not regular in the classes. So then probably the findings of experiments will become biased. So you may also go for comparative sort of thing. You pick up 2 classes of people and compare. With 1 class you introduce, you just tell it from the beginning, this is not a scientific experiment. This is to just test whether these are applicable or not, whether these are beneficial or not. Okay, so I think with so much of talk of online teaching, one can do it with online students. It's very useful. Himanshu should do it. If there are any more questions.
Sir, there are few more questions I'll put up to you on your email only, sir, because now the time does not permit us to take further questions, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. So now it's my time to put on record the thanks. I'll request Nirisha to please take over now. Nirisha.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good evening to all. The best and beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt by heart. Thank you is one such prayer among them. I feel great privilege to propose a word of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University, Regional Center Noida, and NAS College Meerut, and Dr. Sanjeev Mahajan, I extend my heartiest thanks to Dr. Bishwajit Ghosh, who showered us with his knowledge and spending his valuable time with us. Thank you, sir. I also express my deep gratitude to Professor Satya Prakash, former Dean, Faculty of Law, CCS University, Meerut, who joined along with us for this session. Thank you, sir. It's a great pleasure to have Dr. Bishwajit Ghosh, eminent and renowned sociologist, who is also a great writer. His insightful views on research design was full of wisdom and information. He shared with us about UGC e-Pathshala course for research methodology. I assure you, sir, we will all make use of the course. He also shared his views on various types of research design like experimental design, cross-sectional design, longitudinal design, criteria of good research design, reliability, validity, selecting the right research design for the right problem along with examples. Thank you, sir.
Thank
we
you.
have been receiving a lot of honors and appreciation from the participants.
Okay.
We all enlightened by your enlightening talk. Once again, I thank you, sir, for having spared your precious time for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much
sir.
on my part. Yes. Thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you,
Listening to
Manisha.
me.
Again, on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University, Regional Center Noida, and our college, I thank Professor Biswajit Ghosh, a renowned sociologist who has spared up his valuable time and delivered his precious thoughts on research design. I'm really thankful to Professor Biswajit Ghosh, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Thank you everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you,
And
sir.
it was a hectic day. We started at 11 o'clock. We had 3
Yeah, yeah.
sessions.
Right.
And I assure the participants that we meet tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Professor Shweta Prasad from BHU.
Okay.
So, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.